Imagine waking tomorrow and noticing something subtle but unmistakable. The room feels clearer, as if the air itself had learned your name. Your thoughts land with the quiet certainty of answers instead of guesses. Emails line up like they heard a new command. You step outside and the world seems to lean toward you, not because fortune suddenly chose you, but because your brain finally stopped behaving like a closed box and started acting like what it truly is. An antenna. Not a metaphorical one, but a living, pulsing tuner capable of syncing with the larger intelligence that hums through everything. This isn't about wishing harder or stacking rituals like charms on a bracelet. This is the sober claim at the heart of quantum consciousness. When your neural and emotional signals become coherent, when your inner broadcast stops contradicting itself, the universe mirrors you with an accuracy that feels like magic until you realize it's simply physics you can feel. If you've tried to change your life by pushing, you already know the fatigue of the old model. Strategies multiply, timelines extend, and still the finish line keeps sliding a few steps ahead. The problem was never your effort, it was your frequency. A brain stuck in survival oscillations cannot hear guidance, and a heart drumming to the rhythm of "not yet" cannot transmit a signal the field can obey. The good news is disarmingly simple. You don't need to add more noise to be heard. You need to quiet the static. When the chatter softens and the breath lengthens, your nervous system stops broadcasting danger and begins broadcasting availability. The moment that shift occurs, coincidence stops wearing a disguise. Ideas arrive you didn't have to wrestle into being. People appear in the exact hour they're useful. Doors behave like doors again, opening when you turn the handle instead of demanding a performance at the threshold. Let's be clear about the promise we're making. You're not here to become superhuman. You're here to become singular, one steady signal instead of a dozen competing ones. Tuned properly, your brain is not only a thinker, it is a bridge, a biological interface between your private intentions and the universal field that arranges outcomes. Tuning is not theatrical. It's physical and immediate. The way your eyes settle instead of scan, the way your exhale ends without a flinch, the way your posture declares "already" without needing to convince anyone. From that physiology, thought becomes instruction rather than complaint. Emotion becomes voltage rather than noise. Action becomes expression rather than chase. The calendar doesn't evaporate. It simply stops gatekeeping your destiny because coherence outruns time. Before we start, set down the two weights that slow every seeker: urgency and proof hunting. Urgency is the costume lack wears when it wants to be mistaken for commitment. It shatters coherence. Proof hunting is checking the oven every minute and wondering why the dough collapses. It splits your signal. We'll replace urgency with immediacy, the quiet decision to be who you say you are now. And we'll replace proof hunting with literacy, the ability to feel guidance so distinctly that you no longer interrogate your life for signs. You will learn to let your brain receive and transmit cleanly, to let your body carry the message without wobble, and to let your choices become the visible edge of an invisible harmony you can trust. If this resonates, if you can feel that subtle yes in your chest, subscribe now so you don't miss the next steps as they drop. One tap keeps you in sync while we turn this into practice together. In the very next chapter, we'll open the hood on the science and the felt experience of tuning, how your brain becomes an antenna. You'll see how neural oscillations, heart-brain harmony, and a clean emotional signal turn intention into a broadcast the universe can actually obey. Stay with me. This is where the switch flips. Your brain is not a closed circuit sealed inside a skull. It is a rhythmic instrument designed to tune, pair, and broadcast. Every thought you hold, every emotion you sustain, changes its electrical music. When that music is scattered, beta waves spiking from stress, breath shallow, heart rhythm jagged, the signal you send into the world is like a radio between stations. Hiss, static, fragments. Life reflects the static with delays, mixed messages, almosts. But when the music becomes ordered, when brain waves soften into a stable pattern and the heart's rhythm smooths into a coherent wave, the entire system behaves like an antenna that has finally found the station. Intuition grows loud, timing sharpens, synchronicity condenses from coincidence into choreography. The universe is not suddenly nicer. Your tuner is suddenly clear. Picture what happens in ordinary awe. You stand before a skyline at dusk or hear a melody that holds the room. And for a few seconds, the inner chatter falls silent. In that gap, the brain's amplitude settles and the heart's electrical field, which quietly surrounds you all day, becomes more coherent. You feel it as stillness that is awake, a warm center behind the sternum, eyesight softening, breath longer without instruction. You did not force the world to change, yet the next moments often line up with suspicious kindness. An overdue message lands, a stranger offers the exact sentence you needed. A decision feels obvious instead of heavy. That is your nervous system in broadcast mode. The state made the signal legible. The field did the rest. Most people try to manifest from the neck up, think harder, focus longer, while their biology is humming a contradictory song. The mind declares, "I am ready." But the body breathes like a hunted thing. The jaw is clenched. The voice rises at the end of sentences as if asking for permission. The brain's oscillations follow the body's alarm, and the heart's rhythm loses symmetry. The transmission goes fuzzy, and reality mirrors the fuzz. Mixed results, mixed feedback, mixed days. The correction is mercifully simple. Shift the physiology first. When you lengthen the exhale, the vagus nerve whispers to every organ, "We are safe." Safety is not a luxury. It is the platform coherence stands on. From safety, neural noise quiets, and the prefrontal cortex regains leadership. Attention steadies. Choices clean up. Your antenna locks. Think of the brain's frequencies as gears. High, frantic beta is the gear of analysis and vigilance, necessary for moments of precision, but exhausting as a lifestyle. Drop into alpha, and you enter the gear of receptivity, where the door to insight opens and pattern recognition blooms. Slide further into a calm, present theta, and imagination and memory meet. Imagery becomes vivid and malleable. You can rehearse a future with such clarity that the body begins to treat it as reference, not fiction. None of this is mystical for its own sake. It is practical because the field mirrors identity, and identity is the state you can hold without wobble. Alpha-theta coherence with an open chest and unhurried breath is a state you can train. Train it, and your requests stop sounding like wishes and start sounding like settings. This is where the heart steps from poetry into leadership. The heart is not just sentiment. It is an electrical engine with a field measurable several feet beyond the body. When its rhythm becomes ordered, what researchers call coherence, the brain follows the beat. Communication between heart and head strengthens in both directions. The result is a unified signal, emotion as voltage, thought as code, action as carrier. In that alignment, the sentence, "I am available," no longer reads to the universe as theater. It reads as instruction. Rooms answer to it. People sense it without knowing why they trust you. Obstacles act less like walls and more like undecided matter leaning toward your tone. You have already run this experiment by accident. Remember the day you were inwardly calm for no good reason, and everything moved with unreasonable ease. The parking space at the door, the email answered in minutes, the conversation that resolved in one pass. The external choreography looked like luck. Inside, your antenna was simply in phase. Eyes steady, breath honest, shoulders not pretending to be smaller than your worth. The brain took the hint, the heart amplified it, and the world mirrored the single story you were telling with your whole system. What we are doing now is removing the accident. We are making the phase lock deliberate. Skepticism is welcome here, because skepticism asks for reliability rather than spectacle. Reliability lives in the smallest, repeatable choices. Begin with the way you sit when you decide something that matters. Lift the crown of the head as if there were a quiet thread. Widen the collarbones by a finger's width. Let the lower ribs soften on the exhale. Notice how the brain's speed drops half a gear when the chest is not a cage. Notice how the next thought you choose has less panic in its verbs. The antenna was not hiding in a ritual, it was hiding in posture and breath. Add a second lever. Attention. Instead of scanning for threats, rest your gaze as if you were greeting a landscape, even when you are looking at a screen. The optic nerve signal tells the limbic system we are hunting or we are home. Choose home more often than your history expects. Home is where signals clean up, then refine the input you give the tuner. A body living on jittery stimulants, inflammatory media, and fractured sleep will constantly drag the brain into survival gears. You do not have to become ascetic to become precise. Replace the last doom scroll of the night with 3 minutes of eyes-closed breath that elongates the exhale. Swap one jangly song for a piece of music whose tempo matches the state you want to lock. Spend the first 60 seconds of any important call feeling the warm center behind the breastbone before the first word. These are not nice-to-haves. They are dials on the antenna. You will feel the click, the subtle moment when thinking quiets and receiving begins. In that click, guidance arrives not as a booming voice, but as obviousness. This email now, that outreach later, this sentence exactly as written, that meeting shortened without guilt. Obviousness is intelligence minus interference. As you practice, you will stop asking the universe to shout. Shouting was only necessary because your channel was loud with your own static. A tuned brain does not beg for signs. It recognizes alignment. It begins to treat synchronicity as literacy rather than miracle. And because the field mirrors dominance, the more often you enter this tuned state, the faster matter agrees. You will still work, but the work will feel like expression rather than chase. You will still plan, but planning will feel like listening rather than forcing. You will still wait at times, but waiting will feel like readiness rather than lack. Hold this one truth as we continue. Your brain is not the source of reality. It is the selector. When it tunes with the heart and settles the body, it broadcasts a single story. Already. The universe speaks that language fluently. Keep tuning, and the next chapter will show you how to give the signal voltage. How to choose the exact emotions that carry your broadcast farther, faster, and without the static of urgency. If thought is the blueprint, emotion is the electricity that lights the building. You can draft the most elegant mental plans for your life, but unless the circuits are live, the rooms stay dark. This is why you can recite affirmations with perfect grammar and watch nothing budge. Yet one sincere breath of relief can reorganize a day that seemed jammed from every angle. The universe is not tallying your sentences. It is reading your signal. And your signal is not primarily linguistic. It is emotional. Not the fleeting flare of mood that rises and falls with headlines, but the steady climate you return to when no one is watching. That climate is what the field mirrors, because it reveals who you are being, not what you are saying. Consider the speed with which your body obeys a remembered pain. You picture the moment you were left, criticized, overlooked, and without any external event, your chemistry surges into defense. Heart rate climbs, breath shortens, muscles contract. The past arrives as if escorted by sirens. That is the power of coherent emotion, instantaneous, unquestioned, causal. Now imagine applying the same coherence in the opposite direction, not as a performance, but as a practiced, embodied choice. Instead of broadcasting the electricity of vigilance, you broadcast the voltage of sufficiency. Instead of rehearsing the ache of not yet, you maintain the warmth of already. In that warmth, your voice changes timbre, your posture remembers its height, your eyes settle, and the world, ever responsive, organizes to match the temperature you are emitting. This is where many seekers get stranded. They try to think their way into a different frequency while permitting their nervous system to hum the old song. They read words like peace and abundance while breathing as if chased. They visualize affection while the body keeps a small flinch loaded in the ribs for when love inevitably leaves. The field listens to the flinch. It hears the gasp beneath the mantra and returns conditions compatible with the gasp. State before strategy is not a slogan. It is an instruction to reverse the order of power. Let the emotion lead, and the intellect will gladly serve. Ask the body to carry the feeling first, and choices start arriving that make sense only inside the feeling. That is when strategy becomes clean. Not the desperate scaffolding of a self that doesn't believe, but the natural choreography of a self whose belief has become physiology. If you need a doorway into this, begin with emotions that your system can believe without a court case. Many people aim straight at euphoria and end up exhausted, because joy, while beautiful, can feel unstable to a body trained by years of bracing. Gratitude is sturdier. Relief is kinder. Peace is the quiet champion. Gratitude tells the limbic system that there is already enough oxygen in the room. Relief unclenches the jaw, returns blood to the prefrontal cortex, and grants you back your options. Peace is not the absence of motion. It is motion without internal friction. When one of these becomes your baseline hum, you stop negotiating with time. Outcomes do not accelerate because you shout. They accelerate because there is no static left to move through. You can provoke this shift with small, repeatable gestures that teach the body a new alphabet. Let the exhale be longer than the inhale, until your biology admits that the wolves are not at the door. Place attention in the warm space behind the sternum and wait. 30 seconds, 90. Until that warmth spreads on its own, the way a coal glows brighter when you stop poking at it. Speak 3 sentences today, as if your request were already friendly to the room. And notice how the room relaxes around your certainty. Walk to your next obligation half a step slower than anxiety demands, and half a step faster than apathy prefers. That pace is where your signal clears. None of this is theater. It is emotional engineering, structural edits to the feeling that powers your broadcast. There is a common fear that choosing emotion first is the same as ignoring reality. The opposite is true. Choosing your state is how you stop letting old realities choose you. If you wait to feel safe until conditions become safe, you have given your thermostat to the weather. If you insist on feeling abundant only when the numbers swell, you have made your frequency hostage to the graph. State before strategy returns authorship to the interior, which is the only place authorship was ever possible. Safety chosen in advance changes the conversation you have with money. Sufficiency felt before the meeting changes the sentence you say in the meeting. Peace installed prior to conflict changes what you refuse to escalate, and that refusal often collapses the very argument you thought you needed to win. Notice how quickly this looks like luck from the outside. The email arrives just as you decided to stop bargaining with doubt. The call returns when you stopped composing the perfect persuasive paragraph and allowed your body to carry unambiguous availability. The introduction that used to require 6 favors appears in a hallway you only walked down because your pace was human enough to notice a door you'd always rushed past. None of these are accidents. They are the field meeting a clean signal with the only response it knows. Precision. Precision can look supernatural to those who think only in effort. But to those who live in state, precision is the most natural thing in the world. And what about the days when the old weather takes the sky again? When sadness sits heavy or fear starts rummaging through your drawers? You do not fight the sky. You keep your lamp on. Allow the feeling to be witnessed inside a larger field of chosen emotion. Let grief cry in a house ruled by peace. Let fear speak its sentence in a room where relief is the landlord. This is not bypass. It is leadership. You are not denying the guest. You are refusing to hand them the deed. The field reads that leadership and begins delivering situations proportionate to your steadiness rather than to your spike. Over time, the spikes shorten and the baseline rises. not because you crushed your shadow, but because you stopped electing it to office. If you want a proof you can hold in your hands, watch your language evolve as your state stabilizes. The question, how long will it take, loses urgency because time is no longer acting as a delivery truck, but as a mirror. When turns into, what am I broadcasting now? And answers follow swiftly, because state questions are answerable in the moment. You will notice your requests contain fewer justifications. Your boundaries require fewer footnotes. Your yes rings like a bell instead of a plea. People around you will call this confidence. You will know it as coherence made audible. Let this land with the weight it deserves. The universe is exquisitely obedient to the feeling you normalize. Normalize urgency, and it will furnish you with lines to stand in. Normalize peace, and it will furnish you with rooms that respect your pace. Normalize sufficiency, and it will keep handing you proof that you are right to feel resourced. None of this absolves you from action. It dignifies your action by aligning it with a current that can carry it. Strategy remains, but it arrives after state as a translation, not as a substitute. And translation, when the original text is clean, is effortless. You will write the email that works, not because you found the perfect adjective, but because your body, your breath, and your tone were already saying the thing the words only needed to confirm. From here, everything we build will sit on this foundation. The next movement is to install the feeling in the body so deeply that it survives fluorescent lights, crowded calendars, and rooms that used to intimidate you. When the nervous system becomes the proof of the emotion you've chosen, your brain stops petitioning the universe and starts instructing it. That is where momentum stops feeling like a chase and starts feeling like gravity working in your favor. The body is the loudest voice you have. It speaks in a dialect the universe never mishears. Breath, posture, gait, gaze, and the subtle voltage of presence that either says already or whispers almost. Most people try to persuade reality with thoughts, while their physiology is testifying against them. The mind declares abundance, while the shoulders curl inward like a parenthesis around lack. The mouth says, "I'm ready," while the jaw holds a small tremor of apology. The calendar fills with strategy while the diaphragm barely moves, sending a continuous telegram of threat through the vagus nerve. The field obeys the telegram, not the speech. This is why embodiment is not theatrics or confidence tricks. It is signal hygiene. You are not pretending to be a future self. You are letting your nervous system practice the chemistry that future self lives in, until the chemistry becomes your baseline and the future loses its permissions over you. Begin with the simplest lever and the oldest one, the exhale. When the out-breath lengthens and finishes without a flinch, the body stops financing the rumor that something is wrong. Parasympathetic influence returns blood to the prefrontal cortex, where choice lives. The eyes stop scanning and start settling, and with that settling, a second lever becomes available. Posture that does not audition. This is not peacocking. It is the spine remembering it is a mast, not a question mark. Widen the collarbones by a whisper so the heart is not a hiding place. Let the head float as if hung from a filament of light. In this geometry, words land differently. You do not have to drive a point with volume because the sentence is carried by structure. The universe, which mirrors the dominant signal, treats that structure as instruction. Rooms open, conversations shorten because they do not need to circle around your wobble. People answer yes or no without dragging you through maybe. The nervous system is a brilliant archivist. It remembers the corridors where you shrank to stay approved. It remembers the doorways where you rushed because stillness felt suspicious. When you re-enter those places with a new climate, alarms may ring. Let them. Embodiment is not the absence of old sirens. It is the refusal to hand them the microphone. Keep the exhale honest. Keep the gaze soft. Keep the pace human. Walk half a step slower than anxiety thinks is necessary, and half a step faster than apathy prefers. You will feel the click. the moment the body accepts the memo that urgency has been relieved of duty. Inside that click, your voice drops a fraction of an octave. Your requests stop rising into question marks at the end. Your boundaries arrive as clean sentences instead of essays. And reality, hearing a single story instead of a chorus of contradictions, responds with precision. Think of embodiment as the choreography of already. The person who has the outcome you seek does not move like they are on trial. They do not pad their sentences with softeners to preempt rejection. They do not ask rooms to rescue their clarity. Their physiology is the proof of belief. You can practice that proof before the evidence arrives, not as fantasy, but as calibration. The body is an entrainment device. It will drag the mind into the state it repeats most often. When you inhabit sufficiency, shoulders unhurried, breath that finishes, eyes that look, not hunt, the mind tires of contradicting you. It stops lobbying for old stories because the chemistry of those stories no longer has a home. This is how identities end without a war. You evict their biochemistry. There is a quiet ethics that emerges when your signal stops splitting. You no longer need to harvest approval from rooms that dilute you, so you stop spending your posture to buy belonging. You negotiate in clear daylight instead of fog. You decline invitations that would tax your steadiness, and you do it without turning the host into a villain, because your nervous system no longer requires a story to justify a boundary. This ethics is efficient. It saves wattage. It lets you carry more day with less drag, because you are not wasting electricity on micro-pretending. That saved wattage becomes magnetism. People describe it as presence, gravity, charisma. What they are feeling is your lack of leakage. In a world addicted to performance, a body that refuses to perform reads as relief. Relief is irresistible. On the days when the older chemistry reclaims your hands, when you hear yourself over-explaining, when your breath climbs into your throat, when your spine returns to parentheses, do not adjudicate. Adjust. One hand to the chest, one honest exhale, then another. Let the jaw unhook. Feel your feet on the floor until sensation outruns the story. Speak the next sentence from the place behind the sternum rather than the place behind the eyes. Return your pace to the domain of mammals, not machines. This is not self-soothing as escape. It is self-leadership as course correction. The field does not punish a wobble. It mirrors the repair as swiftly as it mirrored the split. In fact, these tiny repairs are how confidence becomes unperformative. You stop needing to be perfect because you trust your ability to return. As embodiment stabilizes, the strangest mercy appears. You forget to try. You walk into rooms with the same temperature you inhabit alone. You stop asking outcomes to certify your worth because your nervous system no longer outsources that job. You discover that time behaves differently around a body that is not negotiating with itself. Meetings end sooner, emails arrive faster, detours thin. Outsiders call it timing. You will recognize it as physics, the field obeying the cleanest broadcast in the room. From here, the path ahead becomes simpler, not because life loses complexity, but because your system no longer adds friction to it. The next step you take is not to chase reality, but to let reality feel the steadiness it can safely organize around. And in that steadiness, the next movement of mastery becomes natural, learning how to hear and follow the universe when it begins to pull, lightly, unmistakably, toward your precise timeline. Once your signal stops wobbling, something quiet begins to happen that hustle can't manufacture. You notice patterns arranging themselves with a gentleness that feels almost shy at first. A name rises to the surface of your mind just as their message arrives. You feel an urge to leave 5 minutes earlier than usual and step into the exact conversation that unknots a problem you thought would take a month. A sentence you needed finds you in an elevator, on a receipt, in the margin of a book you don't remember buying. This is not the universe spoiling you for good behavior. It is guidance becoming audible because you have finally turned down your own static. Synchronicity is not exception. It is literacy. When the brain, heart, and body hum the same note, the field answers in its native syntax: timing, proximity, and improbable precision. Think of guidance as a current that has always been flowing under the noise of your preferences and fears. When you were split, you could only hear its roar in crisis or its whisper during rare, accidental calm. Coherence does not increase the volume of the current. It increases your receptivity to it. The first sign of receptivity is obviousness. What used to feel like a tangle of options suddenly presents a single, clean next step. Not with fireworks, but with the unremarkable sense of course. You are not hypnotized into passivity. You are released from compulsive improvisation. The need to prove your intelligence by solving every variable subsides, and something more interesting takes the wheel: accuracy. Accuracy looks like fewer emails that explain and more messages that land. It looks like taking a route you cannot justify and arriving in a room you could not have scheduled if you tried. To follow guidance well, you must retire the superstition that it always feels ecstatic. Sometimes the pull carries the softness of inevitability rather than the spike of excitement. Excitement is volatile for nervous systems trained by vigilance. Inevitability is sturdy. It is the way an exhale feels when you stop bracing. It is the warmth behind the sternum that does not audition for attention. It is the uncluttered thought that wanders in when you set your phone down and let silence have a chair. If the body is tense, you will misread quiet certainty as absence and go hunting for louder signals. If the body is settled, you will recognize the small nudge as the entire map for the next right inch. There is a choreography to synchronicity that becomes apparent as you practice. The field prefers minimal waste. It will not route you through spectacle when a hallway will do. It will not ask for your sleep when a 3-minute pause would have cleared the static. It will not demand a sacrifice of your integrity to hurry an outcome that is already on time. Your job is to stay sensitive to economy. Notice how often the shortest, honest sentence solves what a long performance would have complicated. Notice how often leaving a room when your body says enough preserves the exact wattage you need for the opportunity that appears as you turn the corner. Notice how often doing one thing with full presence collapses 3 other to-dos you thought were separate. This economy is not stingy. It is elegant. Elegance is a proof that you are listening. Skepticism may ask for a mechanism. Offer it this. When your nervous system broadcasts safety, your visual field literally widens, pattern recognition improves, and your timing with external rhythms tightens. In that state, you notice the invitation others miss because they are sprinting. You hear the novel phrase in a meeting and respond to that phrase, not to the archived arguments in your head. You sense micro yeses in other people and stop pushing where there is no consent. The world feels less adversarial because you are no longer arguing with it. You are in duet. Duet is not passivity. It is partnership. It is the difference between dragging the river and catching the tide. At this stage, the most radical discipline you can practice is non-interference. Not the apathy of doing nothing, but the mastery of not tinkering with what is already aligning. Old identities love to add extra steps to earn their keep. They will suggest a flourish where a period belongs, an apology where clarity already did the job, an extra meeting to soothe the part of you that worries you haven't done enough. Non-interference is the quiet refusal to reinsert effort where guidance has already placed ease. It is trust without theatrics. It is leaving the email alone after sending it because the signal was clean when it left your hands. It is allowing the phone to stay silent without assuming abandonment, because abandonment is an old language you do not speak anymore. You will know your literacy is maturing when you stop asking every coincidence to swear on a book. Proof hunting was how you coped with an incoherent channel. You demanded omens because you could not yet feel the rightness in your bones. As the bones learn, the demand for spectacle dissolves. You work with smaller, more precise signals. The breath that deepens when a choice fits. The stomach that tightens when a great opportunity is actually a leak. The lightness that follows a true no. You begin to treat resistance with nuance. Some resistance is the friction of expansion. It melts when you breathe. Some resistance is the body's way of pulling the fire alarm on a misalignment. You learn the difference by what happens after you respect the signal. If peace follows, you heard correctly. Let your environment apprentice to this literacy. Curate it with the tenderness of a musician guarding a well-tuned instrument. Give silence a daily appointment so the channel remembers it has a lane. Feed your attention with materials whose tempo steadies you rather than scrambles you. Sit with people whose presence does not tax your broadcast. This is not preciousness. It is maintenance. A clean antenna does not fear the storm. It simply does not live in one by choice. In time, guidance will begin to feel less like an external voice and more like the natural extension of your own coherence. You will stop announcing every alignment as if the cosmos had parted clouds just for you, and start treating alignment as the expected outcome of a stable signal. That humility is power. It keeps you available to the next cue without clinging to the last result. It keeps you moving not because you are behind, but because the current is generous and motion is how you say thank you. From here, what accelerates is not your pace, but your precision. You take fewer steps and cover more ground. You send fewer messages and spark more movement. You have less to prove because reality is doing the proving for you in the only way it ever could, synchronizing with your tune. And with precision comes the threshold we are approaching now. The collapse moment, when the wave you have been selecting chooses, suddenly, obviously, to become your world. There is a threshold the mind cannot schedule. A click in the mechanism where selection becomes substance, and the world rearranges as if it had been waiting for your clarity all along. You will not hear a trumpet. You will sense an absence, the absence of strain where desire used to ache. For days you have been choosing coherence over argument, breath over hurry, precision over performance. Nothing looked cinematic from the outside. You were simply faithful to the signal. And then one morning, the familiar question, when, does not rise. In its place is a calm familiarity, as though the future you rehearsed has wandered into the room and sat down without asking permission. That is the prelude to collapse. The moment your inner atmosphere stops negotiating with your intention, and matter, ever obedient, stops negotiating with delay. The shift often appears ordinary to everyone except you. An email that had stalled for months arrives with a sentence that unlocks the entire project. A call answers itself. A seat opens where you used to stand. The conversation that once required 6 clever arguments resolves in 3 clean words because your tone no longer asked to be rescued. What changed was not the universe's mood. What changed was the consistency of your broadcast. Contradiction ended. Your body, your emotion, and your attention told a single story long enough that reality could stop hedging its bets. The field does not reward effort, it mirrors dominance. When already becomes the dominant state, the field makes it visible with unnerving speed. Speed feels strange the first time because you are accustomed to earning outcomes on a staircase. Collapse is not a staircase. It is water reaching its own level the instant the obstructions are removed. This is why the mind scrambles to reverse engineer the moment. Was it the exact breath count? The phrasing in that message? The hour Arb left the house? As if repeating a ritual could substitute for repeating coherence. The honest answer refuses superstition. The cause was your state, held long enough to become identity. Identity is the thermostat. Behavior is the room catching up. When identity warms, the room does not argue, it adjusts. A curious mercy follows collapse. The compulsion to monitor fades. You are no longer refreshing dashboards to make sure reality is behaving. You are busy participating in the way it now behaves. You do not stalk outcomes because surveillance was only necessary when you doubted the signal that sent them. You move through the day with the efficiency of someone who has stopped spilling wattage on proof. Decisions take less narrative and more sentence. Boundaries sound like doors closing softly instead of alarms. You discover that time is generous when you stop trying to intimidate it. Protecting a newborn timeline does not require hypervigilance. It requires the same simple fidelity that invited it. Keep your physiology honest. Exhales that finish, posture that doesn't audition, pace that matches a person who belongs where they are. Keep your language exact. Requests that land as declarations without apology, yes and no that do not travel with footnotes. Keep your environment tuned. Inputs that steady your signal instead of splitting it. You are not being precious. You are keeping the channel clear while your nervous system memorizes this as the new baseline. Soon, you will not have to think about it at all. The body remembers what it repeats, and repetition is how gravity changes direction in your life. Expect endings as part of the agreement. Collapse pulls in what matches, and by the same law, it lets go of what doesn't, sometimes swiftly. A role concludes in one precise conversation and leaves relief where fear predicted regret. An old storyline knocks and finds no room, not because you hardened, but because your atmosphere no longer feeds its chemistry. Treat these closures as evidence that the signal is working, not as omens that must be explained to onlookers. Elegance is quiet. Let it be. And when an old reflex grabs the wheel for an afternoon, when you over-explain, when urgency sneaks in dressed as responsibility, when you feel the spine turning back into parentheses, do not turn wobble into narrative. Return. One breath that ends without a flinch is a full reset. One true sentence spoken from the warm center behind the sternum repairs more than an hour of self-critique ever could. The field mirrors repair as quickly as it mirrored contradiction. Confidence grows here, not from an absence of mistakes, but from repeated evidence that you can come back to yourself faster than the past can reclaim you. You will know collapse has settled into normal when gratitude ceases to be a performance and becomes your resting climate. Not the loud thanks that tries to keep luck from leaving, but the quiet yes that infuses ordinary tasks, answering a message with full presence, walking without rushing a corridor that used to shrink you, closing the laptop at the right hour because clarity multiplies in rest. From this climate, mastery stops looking like spectacle and starts looking like housekeeping. Keep the broadcast clean, keep the leaks sealed, keep the pace human. This threshold is not the end of the work. It is the end of the old kind of work, the version that tried to drag matter uphill. From here, your labor is alignment, maintaining the simplicity that made instant agreement possible. And as you hold that simplicity, something even more powerful emerges on the horizon. The ethic that keeps power safe. How to steward influence, attention, resources, and love without fraying the signal that brought them. That is where we go next. Arrival is exhilarating. Stewardship is sacred. The instant a new reality settles into place, a subtler assignment begins. Keep the signal that summoned it intact while you live inside what you asked for. This is where many timelines fray. Not because the universe withdraws its favor, but because the nervous system, dazzled by novelty and noise, forgets the simple fidelity that opened the door. Integration is the discipline of refusing amnesia. It is less about performing at a new altitude and more about remembering to breathe the way you breathed to get here. Exhales that finish without a flinch. Posture that doesn't audition. Choices that land without apology. Ethics is the companion to that discipline. It asks, now that the field is answering you in real time, will your power make rooms safer, clearer, kinder? Or will it recruit your old scarcity to build something loud and hollow? Power is only dangerous when it is used to compensate for a signal we no longer maintain. Keep the signal, and power becomes service. Begin by acknowledging a quiet truth. Results are fruit, not root. The root remains your state. Money, attention, access, love. These are mirrors, not engines. If you confuse mirror with engine, you will start polishing reflections and neglect the machinery. So you protect mornings like a craftsman protects tools. not with elaborate ritual, but with the simplest maintenance. A minute of breathing that returns blood to the prefrontal cortex, a brief check-in with the warm center behind the sternum, a memory of what it felt like to act from already. From that arithmetic of small faithfulness, you step into rooms without outsourcing your temperature to their weather. That is integration in motion. The refusal to let metrics become your metronome. Ethics begins at the first boundary you keep after the win. The old self, skilled in audition, will propose tiny bargains to purchase more approval. Say yes to the opportunity that dilutes your signal because it looks strategic. Add an explanatory paragraph to a clean no, so no one thinks you are ungrateful. Double your speed to prove you deserved what arrived quickly. Integration declines with courtesy. Clarity is not cruelty. It is mercy that arrives on time. When your nervous system remains unhurried, you stop taking from others what you refuse to give yourself. You stop building agreements on theater. You stop asking rooms to rescue sentences you were born to speak plainly. In this ethic, negotiation becomes shorter, because truth is shorter. The field loves short truth. It can mirror it without waste. Attention is the first currency that will try to buy you. Let it pass through like sunlight. Warm, welcome, not required for photosynthesis. Praise does not become identity. Criticism does not become prophecy. You evaluate both for precision instead of permission. If there is information that would tighten your signal, you absorb it without drama. If there is projection, you release it without ceremony. This neutrality is not indifference, it is sovereignty. A sovereign state is ethical by nature because it does not spend the room's energy regulating your swings. People relax near you. Work simplifies because the weather you bring is predictable in the best way. Clear, kind, steady. Guard the small places you used to leak. Leaks hide in politeness. The friendly maybe, that means no. The just checking in, that means I am afraid to declare. The upward lilt at the end of a true sentence that invites someone to overrule your clarity. Seal them gently. Speak periods where you once scattered commas. Give timelines you can honor without taxing your body into fraud. Move money where keeping it would kink your integrity. And keep money where spending it would try to purchase belonging. Each sealed leak raises the wattage of your presence. Rooms begin to rearrange around someone who doesn't perforate themselves to stay light. That rearrangement is not arrogance. It is alignment refusing to co-sign its own dilution. Power, used cleanly, will always sound like proportion. You do not speak louder. You speak closer to the point. You do not expand faster. You expand at the speed your nervous system can remain itself. Expansion that erases your ground is not growth. It is expensive forgetting. So you choose scale as a function of stability. If the signal holds, you widen the channel. If it wobbles, you narrow the aperture and tend the root. The culture will try to recruit your miracle into spectacle, announce everything, everywhere, all at once. Integration prefers accuracy over audience. Accuracy creates longevity. Spectacle creates maintenance you did not intend to staff. Service changes texture here. Before the collapse, service could masquerade as strategy. Give to be chosen, teach to be seen, help to be invited in. After integration, service becomes overflow. You offer steadiness instead of solutions you were not asked to provide. You let your clarity co-regulate rooms without insisting on your frameworks. You say less and accomplish more because frequency is more persuasive than rhetoric. This quiet influence is ethical because it honors consent. Your presence becomes an invitation to tune, not an imposition to conform. People leave you more themselves, not more you. Prepare for endings with the same gratitude you reserve for arrivals. Integration will attract what matches and release what doesn't. Sometimes with a clean finality that would have terrified your past self. A partnership completes its assignment. A role that once fit like skin begins to chafe. A habit that ferried you to shore starts drilling holes in the boat. Let go without villain making. Closure is evidence that the signal is still working. Elegance is quiet. Let some endings be unphotographed. On relapse days, because you are human and there will be relapse days, choose repair over regret. Regret is theater. Repair is breath and sentence. You hurried a decision and felt the wobble? Slow the pace you can control. You over-explained and heard yourself audition for permission? Call back with the shorter truth. You let the graph reclaim your worth. Step away long enough to remember that time is a mirror, not a judge. The field mirrors repair as faithfully as it mirrors drift. Confidence grows not from spotless performance, but from the repeated experience of return. Curate inputs as if your signal were valuable, which it is. This is not fragility, it is maintenance. The media you consume tunes you. The rooms you frequent tune you. The conversations you indulge tune you. You do not need to live in a monastery to live coherently. You need to give silence a chair in your day. Retire one thread that scrambles you and sit with people whose presence does not tax your broadcast. Minimum viable hygiene, practiced daily, makes coherence the default instead of the project. Let gratitude remain practical. Gratitude that floats turns into performance. Gratitude that moves turns into memory in the body. Show it with the pace you choose, the rest you protect. The attention you offer without splitting it into 10 tabs. Thank the tools by using them well. Your voice for clarity, your calendar for boundaries, your resources for right-sized generosity. Generosity, integrated, looks less like grand gestures and more like precision. Credit given freely, opportunities shared without hoarding, support offered where it multiplies rather than where it rescues. Rescue is often control in costume. Multiplication is respect. Finally, honor the self that got you here. Do not exile the hustler, retire them with praise. They built a bridge using the only materials they had. Effort, strategy, overcorrection. You can keep the parts that were skill and release the parts that were fear. Let your new ethic be simple enough to remember on a tired day. Keep the signal clean, keep the boundary kind, keep the pace human. When you forget, return. When you return, proceed. From this steadiness, mastery stops needing to announce itself, because results keep doing the talking. And from this steadiness, the simplest truth at the core of this entire journey becomes self-evident. Your brain can connect to the universe and change your reality, but only as safely and as beautifully as you are willing to remain coherent once it does. What changes a life is not a secret sentence or a rarefied ritual. It is the moment your inner weather stops contradicting itself. You have seen how the brain, treated not as a factory of thoughts, but as a living antenna, becomes precise the instant the body settles and the heart leads. You have felt why state must precede strategy, why emotion is the voltage that carries your broadcast farther than effort ever could. You have practiced embodiment as signal hygiene, breath that finishes, posture that doesn't audition, language that lands without wobble, and watched guidance become audible in the form of timing, proximity, and elegant economy. You have recognized the collapse moment for what it is, not reward for strain, but matter agreeing with a message you sustained long enough to be believed. And you have claimed the quiet ethic that keeps power safe, results as fruit, not root, boundaries without theater, growth at the speed your nervous system can remain itself. From here, mastery is not a mountaintop, it is maintenance. Keep tuning the antenna by tending the simplest dials, exhale, posture, pace, attention, until coherence becomes your reflex instead of your project. Keep choosing the feelings that your system can carry without splintering. Peace, gratitude, relief. So the field reads a single climate, not a storm. Keep listening for guidance in the ordinary. Where the universe prefers to speak, keep declining the tiny bargains that dilute your signal and the grand gestures that try to replace it. When you wobble, return. When you return, proceed. The field does not score perfection. It mirrors dominance. and dominance is nothing more than the state you revisit most. If you ever doubt that connection is real, remember how quickly the past can hijack your chemistry with a single memory, and then give the future the same authority. Let your body be the proof by hosting the chemistry of already long enough for matter to stop arguing. Let your days reflect a pace that respects your signal. Let your work become the visible edge of an invisible harmony you trust. This is how miracles go out of fashion in your life. Not because wonder dies, but because coherence makes wonder ordinary. So take the next step with the steadiness of someone who knows the switch is inside, not out there. Your brain can connect to the universe and change your reality. It always could. Now you know how to keep the channel clear, how to speak in the field's language, and how to live in a way that lets results arrive by resonance rather than by chase. Breathe, tune, act from already. And let the world do what it does with a clean broadcast, answer you with precision.